Finally, let's take a look at one more type of seemingly inauthentic language in Felicia's interview. This is also a self-conscious performance, only this time she's performing her own ethnic variety, or at least that of her more excitable peers. This is transcribed in 7, and I'll play it for you now.
So whenever like you see a boy you like something, how the girls up here?
Oh Lord, girls like I'm gonna tell you the words are for the day. They be like, oh my God, he is the bomb. He's slamming. He's luscious. He righteous. Oh goodness. They just say everything. I mean, you know, I'm kind of relate to everything. You know, I go and speak to them and everything. You know, what's up, you got a girl? They say, no, I like to get the digits, no problem. I can do that. I mean, now I'm engaged now, I can't do that.
Again, Felicia appears most consciously aware of the lexical level of language in giving us this demonstration, though obviously she uses, or maybe hyper-uses, other levels of language to illustrate her points. For example, intonational contours that are unmistakably those of AAVE. In addition, she uses morphosyntactic features like habitual B and zero copula, even though speakers don't seem to be too adept at manipulating their morphosyntax when performing voices that are drastically different from their own, as shown in the excerpts we've just been looking at, as well as other studies of crossing, such as Cutler 1999. And again, there are other cases in the literature of people giving performances of varieties considered to be their own. However, it isn't clear here whether Felicia is simply demonstrating how she or her peers really talk, or if she's overdoing it for effect, especially since she distances herself from the slang-filled speech of her peers by saying, me, I'm calm, cool, and collected about everything. Okay, to conclude, we've seen then that there are a number of different kinds of crossing, or ways in which people seem to use voices other than their own in the sociolinguistic interview. We've also seen that speakers can put on their own ethnic varieties, or at least varieties associated with the group with which they identify, and that sometimes such performances seem to be more of a hyper-performance than a demonstration of an authentic vernacular variety. In this, we're reminded of other types of verbal performance. For example, Rowe 2004 discusses the musical performances of several African-American hip-hop artists who seem to use higher levels of some core AAVE features in performance than in more natural speech. Similarly, Copeland 2001 discusses Welsh radio announcers' self-conscious or stylized performance, and often over-performance, of Welsh dialect and ways of speaking. And we've also heard at this conference several papers on dialect performance, including papers by Barbara Johnstone, Rachel Shuttlesworth, Lisa Cohen-Minnick, and others. Hyper-performances of one's own dialect, as well as other types of crossing, lead us to question variationist heavy reliance on unself-conscious, vernacular, or authentic speech, since, especially in today's increasingly interconnected world, people have increasing access to others' language varieties and increasing awareness of their own varieties as distinct from those of others and hence as objects for possible display. In addition, we're led to question the very notion of authenticity itself, including what it means to be an authentic speaker of a particular language or language variety, who gets to decide who counts as authentic, and whether authenticity is something that is inherent or performed. And if indeed authenticity is more of a performance than a characteristic, we need to consider why people would perform themselves, including exaggerated versions of themselves. Following Copeland 2001, it may be that such performances have a twofold purpose. First, they serve to point out that the speakers are fully aware that outsiders' notions of what it means to belong to or speak as a member of a particular ethnic group are often based on exaggerations and on idealistic notions of the authentic as that which is homogeneous, static, and typically exotic. In addition, though, hyper-performance or stylization also enables speakers to reassert that they are indeed authentic members of authentic cultural groups, provided, of course, that we alter our notions of authenticity to reflect the complex, ever-changing, and interconnected lives members of all cultures actually lead. Thank you.
So we don't have an extra microphone here, so please stand up and talk really loud so we can all hear you. Questions, comments? Yes.
years you've been a critical scholar of the old notion of vernacular that a person has. This notion of crossing that you're developing, does it hold on? What is its relation to the notion that every speaker has a vernacular, that's their real dialect? Does it incorporate that assumption, or does it eschew that assumption?
I guess I just have a lot of trouble feeling like there's a real default way of speaking, because people tailor their speech to meet whatever speech situation that they're in, and that you're never really in a situationless environment where you're producing speech, that sort of idea. But as Copeland points out in his 2001 article that I quoted from a few times in here, but this isn't to say that there isn't any such thing as authentic or real, and that notions, that the idea of being authentic or real, or maybe even vernacular or down to earth or something, can be very important to people, and that we can't just say, well, they're kind of fictional and really fuzzy and messy, and let's just dismiss them. We can't really do that either, because I think there's some level where that is important to people.
I was just wondering about the notion of type of performance. You made an important distinction between performing one's own dialect. Just in terms of what we saw in the examples where there may be some accommodation happening versus more stereotypical imitation. And both of those can happen, as you pointed out, about one's own dialect. Do you make that statement, or maybe you can talk a little bit more about whether you're grouping those both as hyper-correction or hyper-performance?
I'm having trouble drawing any lines. I was hoping to come up with like a nice, neat picture where, like, this is plus self-conscious and minus my own dialect, and what can we call that? And this one is minus self-conscious plus other dialect. And I haven't really got that far yet, but I think there are all kinds of interesting distinctions to be made based on whether you're performing yourself or somebody else, whether you're directly talking with a person who speaks another variety, so are you in some way sort of accommodating to them, or never seen anybody who speaks that variety in your life, so it's kind of more artificial in some way. So I don't really have an answer, but I think there are definitely important distinctions to be made about all the different types of using language varieties that wouldn't necessarily be considered to be your own or your vernacular or your genuine variety.
Move on to